Welcome to the Wednesday, March 3rd, 2010 Municipal Platting Board meeting. Will the Secretary please call a roll?
Lendl Story.
Here.
Steve Abel. Ken Fuller.
Here.
Ellen McKay.
Here.
Michael Krieger.
Here.
Anastasia Taylor.
Here.
Jody Moses. Carol Stolpe.
Here.
Daniel Young.
Present.
Oh, we have a quorum, and the next order of business is approval of action summaries. We have action summaries for February the 3rd, 2010, and February 22nd, 2010. May I have a positive motion, please?
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Ms. Stolpe.
We were using
May I have a second?
Beg your pardon.
Is there a second? Is there, Carol?
Carol?
Well, no, but,
It didn't.
are we okay? Okay,
Will do.
Ms. Stolpe approves, and Mr. Krieger seconds. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved, and the action summaries are approved. Next up, approval of minutes. We have minutes for July the 1st, 2009, and August 5th, 2009. May I have a positive motion, please? Ms. Stolpe. And
Move to
is there a
approve the minutes, Madam Chair, for Wednesday, July 1st, and Wednesday, August 5th.
Mr. Young seconds. Is there any objection to the motion?
Madam Chair, not
Krieger?
an objection, but we're described in these minutes as commissioners. I didn't think we were commissioners. I thought we were like board members or something like that, just for future reference. Maybe we're commissioners, and I didn't know it all these years.
You should get a raise.
Yeah.
That may be, first, I didn't catch that, and secondly, there's probably it's an issue with the template that we're using from the Granicus program that's not been switched. It's a generic template, and it didn't get switched to the board. I'll make sure that gets corrected.
Gets corrected. Okay, thank you. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the minutes are approved. Under special order of business, we have election of officers. Or is there any nominations for chair?
Madam Chairman,
Ms. Stolpe?
I move, or I nominate Ellen McKay for chair of the, and Michael Krieger for vice chair. Our leadership has been, I think, very well done this past year.
Oh, thank you for the vote of confidence.
Thank you.
Are there any other nominations? Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes, and I'm the chair, and Mr. Krieger is the vice chair. Next is, under special order of business, is disclosures. Are there any disclosures about the cases on the agenda?
Yes, I have a disclosure. In case S11790-1, I would like to disclose that my firm, R&M Consultants, is under contract with the municipality of Anchorage, and Mr. Hale, who is employed by R&M Consultants, is representing the petitioner tonight. I do have professional and financial involvement in the case. Therefore, I would like to recuse myself from participating.
May I have a motion? Ms. Taylor.
I move that Mr. Story be directed to participate.
Is there a second? Ms. Stolpe seconds. Ms. Taylor, would you speak to your motion?
I will not be supporting my motion based on Mr. Story's financial involvement in the case.
Thank you.
I do have a brief question. I didn't get to my agenda fast enough. Is that the Port of Anchorage subdivision matter that you're talking about? Thank you.
Any other discussion? Since there's objection, we should vote electronically. So a positive motion would direct Mr. Story to participate. A negative motion would have him not participate. That motion fails, and Mr. Story will not participate in that particular. Are there any other? Mr. Young.
In the case of S11694-2 Creekside subdivision, my firm has worked for the previous owners of the parcel, providing environmental services, and we also worked for the land developer. We have also worked for a builder in the eastern part of the subdivision, which is not the parcel that's in front of us today. Our involvement began in 1993 and ended or extended to 2009. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board. I can remain impartial in fact and action as a member of this board without personal bias, and my past involvement and personal interest will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case.
I have a positive motion on Mr. Young's participation. Mr. Krieger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to direct Mr. Young to participate in the case.
Mr. Fuller seconds. Would you speak to your motion, Mr. Krieger?
I didn't hear any financial interest or a perception on Mr. Young's part that he would be precluded from participating fairly in the matter, so I'll support the motion.
Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, Mr. Young, you are directed to participate in the consent agenda. Mr. Young.
Okay, Madam Chair. In the cases S10625-10 Eagle River Crossing, the time extension, in the case S11696-4 Eagle River Crossing modification of approval, and the case S11791-1 Glen Abbey Square, my firm and I have worked for the petitioner in the past on these properties. We have quite a bit of knowledge of these properties. We're not currently working for the petitioner, but my firm has ongoing business and financial relationships with the presenter who will be here tonight.
And do you feel that you can participate?
I would like to be excused from these cases.
May I have a positive motion for Mr. Young's participation, please? Ms. Taylor, is there a second? Mr. Fuller. Ms. Taylor, would you speak to your motion?
I will not be supporting my motion to direct Mr. Young to participate tonight based on his financial involvement in the cases. And if I understand that right, that was the Eagle Crossing cases A and B on the agenda and case D on the agenda? Just to make sure.
It was also the Glen Abbey Square, which is 11791-1.
Okay. Thank you.
He wants to go home early. Okay. Since there's objection, we should vote electronically. A positive vote would direct Mr. Taylor to Mr. Taylor. Jeez. Mr. Young to participate. You sure you want me to be the chair here? No vote would have him not participate. That motion fails, and Mr. Young will be excused from those cases. Any other disclosures? Mr. Young.
I have one more.
Okay.
In the case of 11790-1 Port of Anchorage subdivision, I have worked for the presenter back in 1985. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board. I can remain impartial in fact and action as a member of this board without personal bias. My past involvement and personal interest will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case.
May I have a positive motion on Mr. Young's participation, please? Ms. Taylor, is there a second? Mr. Fuller. Ms. Taylor, would you speak to your motion?
I will be supporting my motion tonight directing Mr. Young to participate based on the lack of personal gain or financial interest in this case.
Thank you. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, Mr. Young, you are directed to participate in that case. Any other disclosures? Oh, Ms. Taylor.
I have 3 disclosures this evening. My first one is under the consent agenda, time extension for Creekside subdivision. I am a homeowner in the neighborhood of this subdivision, and I have publicly recorded my personal opinion on this case. I don't think that it would be appropriate for me to participate on that case based on my personal publicly recorded opinion.
Okay. May I have a motion on Ms. Taylor's participation? Mr. Krieger?
Move to direct Ms. Taylor to participate in that matter that she disclosed on just now.
Which is Creekside subdivision.
Creekside subdivision, thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Young?
Ms. Taylor, would you be able to participate in a fair and impartial manner, even though that you've publicly stated an opinion?
I think the perception of bias would be valid for anybody in the, either the petitioner or the public would be able to look at it and perceive bias based on my really biased public comments.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know where we are. Since,
Do you want me to speak in favor of my motion?
yeah, that'd be good.
I'm not going to support the motion. I think that Ms. Taylor's disclosures of her personal views on this should preclude her from participating.
Thank you. Since there is objection, we should vote electronically.
I don't think there was. We're all, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I beg your
I think
pardon.
we are. Yeah, the leadership's great for this. Okay, a yes vote would direct her, Ms. Taylor, to participate, and a no vote would have her not participate. That motion fails, and Ms. Taylor will not participate in that part of the consent agenda. I think we're going to have to pull it off and move forward with the consent agenda. Are there any other disclosures?
Madam Chair?
Um,
You're still up?
I had 2 more to go.
Oh, 2 more to go.
Yep. Under the new business portion of the agenda, case number S10625, Eagle Crossing, and case S11496, Eagle Crossing, I have a past professional relationship with the petitioner. The firm that I worked for the petitioner on this subdivision, and I did have a financial interest in the case. Historically, the board has directed me to not participate based on that financial interest.
May I have a motion regarding Ms. Taylor's participation in the Eagle Crossing cases? Please. Mr. Krieger. Mr. Young, seconds.
Move to direct Ms. Taylor to participate in the 2 Eagle Crossing cases, 25-9 and 96-3.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I guess I have a... Can you enlighten us, Ms. Taylor, on the prior circumstances that caused you to get out of working on this case?
In my professional career, I am a civil engineer, and I provided civil engineering services for professional and technical services who worked for Driftwood Bay LLC. I provided technical support to this subdivision on the matter of the construction of this road, the drainage surrounding this road, and the development. I also, I believe, attended meetings before the Platting Board presenting the petitioner's case on this subdivision.
Would that prior involvement prevent you from evaluating the information that's presented and dealing with the current applications by the petitioner on these 2 subdivisions? I'm wondering whether the new application sort of starts a new clock for you in terms of what you can do and what you can't do on this.
I would be leery to participate because to the public perception, whether I support the project or not, could be seen as related to my previous employment by the petitioner. And I think the matters that are before the board tonight on this subdivision are too directly related to the work that I did for the subdivision. If there were perhaps a future phase that came in that I had not been so heavily involved in, then yes, I think the bias would be expired perhaps. But for these cases, because I worked on these issues, you will probably be considering things that I provided professional services on tonight, and I don't think that would be appropriate for me to sit in judgment on my own professional services, past professional services.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's see, Mr. Krieger, did you speak to your motion? Did you?
I don't know if I did or not. I don't think I did. I probably just jumped ahead to ask a question. I'm going to speak to the motion. I guess I'm not going to support it. I don't know if I understand fully the reasons, but if Ms. Taylor feels that A, there's public perception issues, and B, their professional services are sort of involved in what she's voting on, that those are pretty good reasons not to participate. So I will not support the motion.
Okay, since there's objection, we should vote electronically. A yes vote would direct Ms. Taylor to participate, and no vote would direct her to not participate. You have to abstain. Oh. That motion fails, and Ms. Taylor, you will be excused from those cases. Any other disclosures?
Madam Chair. Mr.
Krieger.
On the two cases, Eagle Crossing subdivision, I recall once before when this came before the board, I disclosed that I had represented Fortune Properties, which was a company that Ms. Yoshimura had an interest in. And I think at the time I also had represented one of the other parties who was involved in the proceeding. So I made those disclosures, and I would make them again. I don't think that my prior representation of Fortune Properties in an entirely unrelated matter, probably a decade or more ago, has anything to do with the matters before the board, and I don't think it'll prevent me from acting impartially on the matters that are presented.
May I have a motion that would direct Mr. Krieger to participate? Mr. Fuller. Is there a second? Mr. Young. Mr. Fuller, would you speak to your motion?
Yeah, I would make a motion to direct Mr. Krieger to participate, and I plan to support that.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, Mr. Krieger, you are directed to participate in those cases. Any other disclosures? Quickly, let's move on.
Put me down as an abstain on that, though, would you please?
Okay, so that brings us to the consent agenda, and since there has been some disclosures regarding the Creekside subdivision, I would entertain a motion to pull Creekside subdivision from the consent agenda. Please. Does it? I don't know. Ms. Stope.
I can make the motion, and I will, to remove case number S11694-2, Creekside subdivision, from the agenda, but I'm not exactly sure what your intent is in saying that. Is that?
We're just going to consider it separately.
I see.
Consider the rest of the consent agenda.
Yeah, I was unsure what your intent was, so.
So, as it is first on the, no, I don't know. What do we do first? Consent agenda? We'll do the consent agenda first. The consent agenda consists of all matters before the board that do not require a public hearing. All items shall be approved by motion without debate, and we have pulled Creekside subdivision from the consent agenda, so what's left is finding of fact for Seabury subdivision, and may I have a positive motion on the consent agenda as it exists? Ms. Stolpe.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Ms. Taylor seconds. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved and will take up the time extension for Creekside subdivision. May I have a positive motion?
Move to approve the time extension for Creekside subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Krieger. Is there a second? Okay, Ms. Stolpe seconds. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the time extension for Creekside subdivision is approved. Okay, so those that need to leave for Eagle Crossing should depart. We're now at the new business portion of the agenda, and new business consists of public hearings. During the public hearing portion of the consent agenda, we'll follow the procedure that's printed on the front of the agenda, and basically after the case has been introduced, the staff will give a presentation, and then the chair will ask for public input. Persons who wish to testify follow the Platting Board rules of procedure. Petitioners get 10 minutes. Representative of groups like community councils or PTAs get 5 minutes. Individuals get 3 minutes. We keep time with this little timer up here at the front. When you begin your testimony, your time starts. The light will be green. And 1 minute to go, it'll turn yellow, and then red, and at that time you need to sum up your testimony. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action that we take, and the method of appeal is on the front of the agenda. So, with that being said.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just a point of order, a question. Are we at a short board now with the 5 of us here and the 2 people who have disqualified themselves?
We are.
Do we need to make some sort of disclosure about the 5 board members issue?
Yes. Okay. So when there is a short board, postponement is offered to the petitioner. And if they should like to do that, then their case is moved to the next regular agenda. So how do you feel about that?
Yes. Chairman, my name is David Gooding, Triad Engineering, and yes, we'd like to take that option of postponing the 2 Eagle Crossing cases to the next hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. April 7th. Okay.
April 7th.
April 7th.
Thank you.
So, case S10625-10 Eagle Crossing subdivision and case S11496-4 Eagle Crossing subdivision are postponed to April 7th.
I'm sorry, I'll wait till we get to the end of the agenda.
So we need, yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay. I think the door is locked. At least it was. Oh, was it?
we only got to, because we only have 5 members of the board now, they have a short board option.
Okay, the next case is case S11790-1, Port of Anchorage subdivision. May we have the staff presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would like to point out that there were some minor revisions to the recommended conditions of approval, and they were placed on the table tonight. They basically deal with item 6. Regarding plat notes, there were a number of emails that were exchanged today, and agreement was reached with reviewing agencies and the applicant regarding those changes. Basically, this is preliminary plat for proposed Port of Anchorage subdivision tracts H and I. It's a subdivision of 2 tracts into 2 different tracts of land with a variance from that require commercial industrial street improvement standards. The platted area contains 1,629 acres, and it includes both the Port of Anchorage and tidelands. It is served, the port is served by public water and sanitary sewer, and it's zoned both marine industrial and transition district. The purpose of this plat is basically to accommodate future expansion of the port to the north of existing Tract G, which is one of the underlying plat tracts, and to establish easement corridors for existing as well as proposed utilities throughout the port complex. This plat will provide an 80-foot wide right-of-way to be dedicated for Terminal Road. It will extend from its current terminus adjoining Tract H, excuse me, and will extend to the south boundary of proposed Tract I. Both Traffic and PM&E did request a regulation turnaround right-of-way dedication on Tract I for that road. Portions of the port are impacted by flood hazard areas, which would require a special permit, a flood hazard permit for any construction that would be in the floodplain. This condition is addressed by a note to be placed on the plat. PM&E does require a grading and drainage plan to be submitted to resolve the need for drainage easements. Now, the applicant in their application stated that they have enormous volumes of soils reports for all of the improvements and developments that have taken place in the port area, and they offered to provide any soils report to PM&E in reviewing the final plat phase upon request, but it is a very large volume, and they're more than willing to do that, but PM&E would not need all that information for this particular plat, and that was agreeable to the reviewing agencies. One of the concerns of the fire plan review that generated a change in the conditions of approval is that there was a belief that Government Hill was the only access to the port. However, staff from the port did provide information that there is another access through Elmendorf Air Force Base. And the fire plan review was originally requesting a note be placed on the plat regarding limitations on construction of building, whether building size, whether it was sprinklered or unsprinkled, and that was based on just having one access. The fire plan review, in their subsequent comments received today, was agreeable to eliminating that plat note. It should be noted that since 2001, the Port of Anchorage has been a controlled facility. It does prohibit public access to the site, and per an agreement reached with the port, the municipality does not maintain the interior roads within the port. There was further discussion on that issue because a plat note was suggested by the Maintenance and Operations Department to place a note to that effect. However, there are some roads and some drainage from Eldmendorf Air Force Base, as well as the proposed Cabata Road, that would not fall under the port responsibility to maintain. So there was a substitute plat note that was agreed to by all parties, and that's part of the changes that were made to the recommended conditions of approval. The port does lie within approach departure zone easement. That information was provided on Plat 92-123, and that information is requested to be carried over to the current preliminary plat when it's finalized. And there are waters of the U.S. within the plat boundaries, which is addressed by, that fall under the jurisdiction of the Corps of Engineers, and there's a plat note that responds to that concern as well. The variance for construction to commercial and industrial street standards, reviewing the four standards for granting a variance, the existing terminal road is strip paved, and there is no public access, so there would not be any detriment to the public welfare. The current level of improvement does adequately serve the lessees that have businesses in the port, as well as port operations themselves. As far as a hardship, lease lots do change their configuration from time to time. If there are curb and gutter requirement to be constructed, it would basically restrict the configuration of these lease lot areas and place the port in the situation of having to reconstruct roads, possibly when they change lease boundaries. Based on those findings, the department does recommend approval of the variance, as it appears that the four standards are met, and does recommend on the supplement provided tonight approval of the preliminary plat subject to 6 conditions. Condition 6C, which dealt with the fire plan review, has been recommended for deletion, and Condition 6B has been amended to require a note stating entering into an intergovernmental agreement or a memorandum of understanding with the municipal Maintenance and Operations Department to address responsibility for the maintenance of roads and drainage systems in Tract 8H, and that should occur prior to recording a final plat for this property. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Are there any questions of Mr. Bryant, staff? No questions? Then we'll open the public hearing and hear from the petitioner, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Taylor.
Through the chair, Ms. O'Brien, if Condition 6B is supposed to be accomplished prior to recording the final plat, why are we putting it on as a plat note instead of a condition?
Madam Chair, Ms. Taylor, in conversations with, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Mr. Dan Southard, he is the supervisor in maintenance and operations, he would like to see that intergovernmental guarantee to resolve who is responsible for what. He did not want to hold up the plat by the original plat note which basically stated the municipality does not have any maintenance responsibilities within the port, but he would like to get that intergovernmental memorandum resolved by the recording of the final plat. And it was stated as a plat note, but it really should be a condition. And I'll be interested to hear what the staff from the Port of Anchorage feels about that, because it was listed as a plat note, and I don't know if they were expecting to have to do that as a condition of plat.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, now we'll hear from the petitioner.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Todd Coles. I'm the city's port engineer, and will act on behalf of the petitioner. I would also like to introduce Mr. Dave Hare from R&M Consultant, who is assisting me in this matter and can answer any questions pertaining to surveying particularly. With regard to the question on the proposed plat note, I would rather see that as a condition to plat versus a note on the plat. We feel very confident we can come to an agreement with the city's operations and maintenance department in advance of the final plat. So I think it would be redundant to have a platting note in that regard, and may confuse other parties in the future. I really don't have anything else to say unless there's other questions.
Any questions for Mr. Coles? Nope. Then you have 9 minutes of rebuttal.
Well, thank you very much for having us tonight. This is my first time before you, so sorry I don't have more.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify in case S11790-1 Port of Anchorage subdivision? Anyone at all? Okay. Seeing none, would you care to use any of your rebuttal time? Ms. O'Brien?
If it's okay, I just wanted to, I didn't refer to the renumbering. If that becomes, if condition 6B becomes a condition, that would become condition 6, and then the plat note would become condition 7. I just wanted to make sure the renumbering was approved by the Platting Board.
Doesn't 5 refer to notes as well? Shouldn't it be condition 5? And then
Madam Chair, I did 5 as a separate condition because that's carrying notes over from prior plats.
okay.
And then the entering into the intergovernmental agreement would be condition 6, and then the new plat note would be condition 7.
Okay. Okay, since there's no one from the public wishing to speak, we'll close the public hearing. Are there any questions of staff from the board?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Krieger?
Ms. O'Brien, through the chair, can you respond to the petitioner's comments about whether or not these notes should be on the plat or be resolved as conditions ahead of time?
Madam Chair, Mr. Krieger, actually it makes more sense to make it a condition because as a plat note, there's no time certain when that agreement would be reached. But if it's reached prior to recording a final plat, as the Maintenance and Operations Department requested, there is no need to have the plat note on there.
Follow-up question.
Mr. Krieger?
Assuming we went that way, do you have some language that we should use to modify the modified department recommendation to toss that into condition as opposed to a plat note?
Madam Chair, Mr. Krieger, the only thing I can think of is entering into that agreement and a comma after Tract H and state prior to recording a final plat.
So does 7A stay as a plat note, and it's just B that comes out? I'm sorry if I'm out of order.
No,
Is that
you're doing
what
fine.
you're talking? Okay.
Madam Chair, Mr.
Okay.
Krieger, that's correct, because the fire department has agreed to delete condition 6C regarding, and that's why the strike-through is in there.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, may I have a positive motion on case S11790-1, Port of Anchorage? Ms. Taylor, is there a second? Mr. Krieger seconds. Ms. Taylor, would you speak to your motion, please?
In the matter of case S11790-1, Port of Anchorage, I move for approval of the variance of AMC 2185, Table B, Commercial and Industrial Streets Improvement Standards. And I intend to support my motion based on the information presented in the packet and the staff presentation.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the variance is approved. Moving on to the plat. Now we have to wait.
I'll have it up on our screen.
Okay, now. Yeah. Ms. Taylor moves and Mr. Krieger seconds. Ms. Taylor, would you speak to your motion?
In matter of case S11790-1, Port of Anchorage, I motion for approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to the conditions that are listed in the supplement that we got this evening on the desk, and they are going to be conditions number 1 through 7. I want to make sure that what was originally listed as condition 6A becomes condition 7, and condition 6B will now become condition 6. And I'd like to add the language on condition number 6. At the end of the condition as typed, add a comma prior to recording the final plat. And I intend to support that motion.
Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved for 18 months.
Oh, my.
Okay, the last case on the public hearing portion of the agenda is Whisper Woods Subdivision, Phase 1, Case S11791-1. May we have the staff presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rather than a plot plan was submitted with this request to vacate an 8-foot visual enhancement easement. It does run along the east boundary of Lot 1, Block 2, Whisperwood Subdivision, Phase 1. The visual enhancement landscaping abuts a T&E easement that actually adjoins the east property boundary. The existing 8-foot visual enhancement easement does not overlap the 10-foot T&E easement. They have submitted the plot plan that does show 3 structures encroaching 6 feet, and that is as scaled into the landscape easement. Also, a portion of that visual enhancement landscape easement is identified to be used for snow storage. The lot contains 1.5 acres, more or less, and it's proposed to be developed with attached townhouse units. The comments from the reviewing agencies were mixed. Chugach Electric is opposed to having any landscaping other than grass, seed grass planted within their easements. PM&E notes that if the vacation of that easement is approved and use of the area is for building placement, it could affect management of drainage, and they are requesting a grading and drainage plan based on this plot plan. Right-of-way division notes that the plantings in the T&E easement would prevent full access and future use of the easement by utility companies. CEA does note that they have utilities in that easement. And right-of-way recommends that the petitioner provide letters of non-objection from all utilities that have rights to the use of that easement. The original preliminary plat approval for Whisperwood subdivision was done under the abbreviated plat process, and it was approved by the platting authority, which was the platting officer in this case. Now, Condition 8 on that preliminary plat required installation of screening landscaping along the north property boundary adjacent to the highway, the Glen Highway corridor. But I didn't find a requirement for a 8-foot visual enhancement landscaping easement on that summary of action. However, Turpin Road is designated as a neighborhood collector, and a 6-foot arterial landscape easement is required along collector or grader streets, and is required to be planted with landscaping that meets arterial landscape standards. If the petitioner requests elimination of a 6-foot arterial landscape easement, that would fall under the jurisdiction of the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals. So in reviewing this, the department has no objection to vacation of the 8-foot visual enhancement landscape easement subject to conditions. And the first one is to provide a 6-foot arterial landscape easement, 4 feet of which would overlap the T&E easement. Also, the requirement for submitting a grading and drainage plan, providing letters of non-objection from all utilities, providing homeowners documents that require the homeowners association to have full responsibility for maintenance of that easement, and that the vacation of the request would be subject to providing arterial landscape standards. As this is not being, if approved, it would not be accomplished through a replat of the property. It would be accomplished by recording a resolution at the district recorder's office, but conditions 1 through 5 would have to be accomplished before any resolution is recorded. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Are there any questions of staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Krieger?
Just, this is for educational for me. I don't think I remember seeing one that's come before us where we were asked to, where there was a resolution vacating an easement. I'm just curious what the process, do we have the authority to create a resolution that could be recorded vacating an easement outside of the plat process?
Madam Chair, Mr. Krieger, you do, and the platting officer does vacate, like, say, for instance, utility easements rather than requiring a replat. It's a resolution that is typically recorded, and the same procedure can be followed in this instance. You're probably right. You may not have seen something like this, because usually there are plats associated with vacation requests. In this instance, it's a plot plan, because there is no platting action required as the property is being developed without subdivision, creating multiple dwelling units on a single tract or lot.
Just follow up just briefly, and this is maybe a little irrelevant, but so if I had an easement across my property and I wanted to ask the Platting Board or the Platting Authority to vacate it, I could just kind of, in connection with a plot action, I guess I'm not following how this comes in front of us.
Chair, Mr. Krieger, the reason this came to the board is because it was a landscape easement. Certain utility easements, we have recorded resolutions under the abbreviated plat process associated with an as-built survey showing the dimensions or the amount that is being vacated, and that information does run with the land. This, however, was a landscaping easement and did need to come to the board, and because there is no further platting required resolution, vacating by resolution that will run with the land was the alternative to accomplishing this action, depending on what the board's decision is tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Ms. Stolpe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. O'Brien, in the comments that were printed and in what you've just described to us, I don't believe I heard or read any response to the information that's provided to us on page 34. It's from the Municipality of Anchorage Traffic Department, Transportation Planning Division, Non-Motorized Transportation Coordinator. And they seem to have some concerns. The staff opposes the vacation or coexistence of the visual enhancement, landscaping, and so on. And then they list two areas of concern, and then there's an area of concern also from the Anchorage School District, Steve Kalmus. Could you just address that and help us to understand what that's all about, please?
Madam Chair, as I said, that the responses were mixed, and these are comments that would typically go for a site plan, review of a site plan. And the function of the Platting Board isn't to review site plans, so that is the opinion of this writer, but it really wasn't typical to a platting action. It's through a building permit process or through the Planning and Zoning Commission if a site plan is required. Those types of comments would be germane. They were not felt to be germane to this request, which is basically to vacate an easement and supply the landscaping in an alternate location is basically what this request is all about. We'll provide the landscaping that's required by the plat approval, but we request to provide it in a different location on the lot.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing and hear from the petitioner, please.
Chairman, members of the board, my name is David Grenier with Triad Engineering, representing the petitioner tonight. The main purpose of this request is the change in the site plan. The original site plan, which has been approved, and through the site plan review process, through building safety and through PM&E, basically had 24 units which were in a stacked configuration. Because of market conditions and also a change in the type of units, the petitioner is elected to go with a townhouse style. There'd be 2 stories, but not one unit stacked on the other. Because of that change in configuration and the building type and footprint, the landscape easement that was on the original plot, we're requesting that landscaping be relocated more over the top of the T&E easement. And as a note, the new Title 21 basically is going to allow this type of a situation where you have utility easements that you can place the landscape over. The conditions that are written, we are in agreement with those. One point as where it was unclear where this 8-foot came from as a requirement. A lot of times you actually see them swapped, where you have the landscaping adjacent to the right-of-way and then the easement more inland. And this was exactly opposite of that. So we feel like the Title 21, the new Title 21 regulations come out, make a lot more sense where they can coexist. Chugach still has concerns. If they come in and they have to replace the line, they're concerned if this they do not want to be responsible for this landscaping. And as the conditions are written now, they will be part of the homeowner documentations, which we'll be providing to staff for review. So that's in condition number 3. So we feel that condition 3 and 4 together would address Chugach Electric's concerns. As far as the Transportation Planning Division, Traffic Department, this site plan will go back through the building safety and PM&E process. They will be reviewing the revised site plan, and these conditions or points that they bring up will be addressed at that point. So that is typical, as staff has said, as Ms. O'Brien has pointed out. That is part of that process. The letters of non-objection, we're in agreement with those, obtaining those as well. We've done this in the past with the utilities, and we feel we can, along with the homeowners documentation, we feel we can achieve that. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and I'd like to reserve any time for rebuttal.
You have 6.5 minutes.
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Grenier? Ms. Taylor.
Through the chair, I was reading through the Chugach comments, and they included a comment that said they don't want any landscaping within 10 feet of a, I forgot the word they used, but basically a surface-mounted structure. Do you have any indication from them how often those will be installed along this easement?
Madam Chair, Ms. Taylor, there will be 2 along that section. There will be 2 pedestals, one for each of the buildings in this along this stretch of road. And in addition to that, with the requirement, with the 4-foot overlap and 2-foot will be outside, because typically those will be outside of the. We can stay beyond the 10 feet.
I also had a question about fencing. The site plan indicates a 6-foot wooden fence along the north boundary of the property. Is there any way for these homeowners to put fencing on the east boundary of the property, or is it just going to be open to the right-of-way?
The original, through the chair, the original site plan that is approved now basically had that as open, and the thought was that the landscaping would be more of a visual enhancement to the neighborhood than a fence. If you put up a fence right along the property line and then do the landscaping, actually you don't see it.
Any other questions for Mr. Grenier? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify in case S11791-1? Come forward and state your name for the record.
Max Folk. I just live in the neighborhood. Got one of these. I'm not representing anybody except myself. In going through this, I noticed that one of the things that it mentions for the landscaping, 13% less asphalt, which allows for more trees and shrubs. I don't think the 13% asphalt really accounts for anything when you goes to landscaping. So I don't know who or why that was in here, but when you go to whoever opposed it, looks like
Do you have a page number?
Yes, sorry, thanks. And they said that we oppose it, but if you approve it. Something that I got out of that was if they approve it, the homeowner association is responsible. I'm on the homeowner association for our half of the area, and we don't really do anything. If an easement was to be tore up or something to be replaced, the homeowner association isn't going to cover the landscaping. I mean, it's just not. And so if to save 2 feet helps the neighborhood to save some landscaping, that's kind of what I'm for. I'm all for development. I know the market has caused some things to change. They tore out the trees and they plumbed it in for the sewage and stuff last winter, and it sat all summer. No one developed it, and so I knew there was a market change, and everybody did. And I'm glad something's going to go up there because it's better than nothing. But at the same time, you have the 2 feet so we can build this and the easement. For the landscaping's sake, it's never going to pan out once they tear it up. No one's going to replace it. Doesn't look like the municipality or Chugach Electric is going to do it. I know the homeowners association isn't going to do it either. So while I'm all for development and I'm all for something to go into that spot, since it's been torn down and plumbed in for the street. At the same time, if 2 feet can save, once we get some landscaping in there, help it look nice for the future, I'm kind of opposed to the current plan of vacating the easement just for a couple extra feet, because if it's left up to the homeowners, it's just not going to get done. So, thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Fuller? Mr. Fuller.
2 feet, if it was 8 feet by 300 feet, does that make any difference? I mean, if you shrink the 8 feet over here, then you take your driveway down to 22 feet. Now you don't have a driveway.
Well, okay. I apologize. I just received this thing. I know that on our driveways, how we shrunk down some square footage was to, instead of having square driveways, they cut off the ends. And so I have pointy driveways. I don't know where this easement, if that's what, in my head looking at it, I didn't know how a driveway was going to come out of there, because there's already a built-in.
Well, no, if you moved 8 feet, then you have to move your building forward 8 feet. Now you shrink your driveway on the other side of your building for parking. So I don't, you're going to lose space one side or the other, but it's not 2 feet. It's 8 feet by the length of that whole side of the property, 248 feet.
We'll have to, I might not have the same, I don't want to take up any more time than you have, but what are you looking at to see that?
Well, I was just responding to your 2 feet. I don't think it's 2 feet.
No, No, it's not too, and that's what I mean, to shrink from 8 to 6 to go from,
It's going from 18 down to 10. Is that right?
okay, that's 8.
And here's 10.
That's already 8, or it is 10. From 10 to 8?
This is what Mr. Fuller is referring to on this plot plan.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the 8 feet. You're looking at the same thing that you're now looking at the same thing Mr.
Okay.
Fuller is looking at.
Fair enough.
For ease of traffic and for the people, it's going to be more beneficial for them to have that in their drive areas and their access than it is going to be on the backside where it's basically a dead area.
It's a dead area, but if that dead area is the easement, right?
Well, it's the easement, plus you've got another, I don't know, I guess another 10 or 12 feet, then you've got a sidewalk before you get to the street curb. So there's a significant amount of area that's...
The street being Turpin.
Pardon?
The street side being Turpin.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay, yeah, so there's... Once you tear that up for the utility or the easement, I mean, it's...
Well, I understand what you're saying, but there's different homeowner associations. Some are very active and
some are not. And I'm saying, I'm guessing this is not. And so, yeah.
The agreement is...
Someone's driveway, that's fine, but when you pull in there, it's not someone's nice driveway, it's a garage and it's asphalt. I mean, you don't sell these homes based on the driveway. And so I'm saying if we extend that and that gets torn up in the back, the active or inactive, yeah, that's on me. And I'm telling you, it's inactive. And so I guess I don't want to make it easier to tear it up when it's not going to be easier to be fixed.
Any other questions for Mr. Fall? Thank you very much.
So thank you for this.
I don't think you get to keep it. Mr. Fall?
You can have my copy.
I got it. I see it over there.
Okay.
Sir, that's part of the record.
That one back.
I need that one.
No, you can take it. I was holding it up.
Oh. Misunderstood.
Thank you for the testimony. Okay, Mr. Grenier, do you wish to use your rebuttal time?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. 2 quick points. One, because of the condition that is written, there will be funds set aside in the homeowner's documentation that will address replacement of landscaping if required. The other point I'd like to make is that the electrical and telephone will be installed prior to putting up the buildings, and so we're not looking at putting in the landscaping, then tearing up and putting in the utilities. And the way that Chugach works now, they put their improvements in conduits, and if you have a line breakage, a lot of times they'll go from transformer to transformer, and they can pull it out without disturbing anything. So the risk is relatively low. The homeowners associations, a lot of them, do not have this type of a condition on it that you have to put in this type of landscaping. So this would be drawn up and pointed out. So I think it's pretty well covered. So.
Any questions for Mr. Grenier?
Thank you.
Thank you. That public hearing is closed and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Krieger.
In the case S11791-1 Whisperwood Subdivision Phase 1, I move to I move to adopt a resolution which tracks the staff's recommendations to vacate the 8-foot visual enhancement easement subject to the conditions in the staff's recommendation.
And Ms. Stolpe seconds. Mr. Krieger, would you speak to your motion, please?
I'm going to support the motion. I appreciate Mr. Volk's comments. I think that to the extent the vacation of the easement, what I gathered from Mr. Grenier's comments was if the vacation of this easement on the east side results, one thing's going to happen is there's going to be some money in a homeowners association apparently to deal with it, and then perhaps if the homeowners association felt it wasn't being effectively dealt with, they could address it more aggressively themselves. So I think that it's a reasonable proposal, and I'll support it.
Any other comments? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved, and the 8-foot visual enhancement landscape easement is vacated, and that's it. Okay, so that's the end of the new business portion of the agenda. Persons to be heard? Reports? Board member comment?
Yes, Madam Chair. I do have some comments. I have actually 6 of them that I wanted to make with the board's indulgence. These go to the Eagle Crossing subdivision matter that's apparently going to come in front of us next month. And my comment to board, I guess, would be to discuss and, if appropriate, to address to the planning department some questions that would have come up had we addressed this matter tonight that I think it may be appropriate to tee up for the staff the next time it comes in front of us. So with the chair's indulgence, I'll just touch these real quickly, if I may. First, I think we should try to make a positive effort to make sure we have enough people to have a quorum here next time, so that we don't, because we're going to run into the same 2 disqualifications at least. The second comment is I would like to be able to assess what effect a no vote would have on the development and construction of the emergency road. And I would appreciate if possible, if in staff's packet for next time there was some discussion of what happens if we vote no, sort of like a finding, in an environmental impact statement. They always say, well, this is the non-action alternative. I didn't see anything addressing what would happen if we voted no. I would be interested to also know if there is any performance guarantee, any bond that's in place that could kick in that the municipality could draw on to get this road built. It sounds like for some reason or other we didn't get a performance guarantee when the subdivision agreement was entered into. So we may be flying naked in terms of having a pot of money to draw on to build this road if the developer doesn't. So I'd be interested to know, and I don't think it was addressed in this packet that I looked at, whether there is any other bond that could kick in. I would be also interested to hear whether there's been any update in the progress of the negotiations between PM&E and the developer to get these plans for this road approved. The fourth comment I had is I'd like to know if there's any reason why the petitioner waited until September 1st of '09 to bring its plans for this road to PM&E when they knew that we had resolved that they had to have this road in by October 1st of 2009. So they basically waited a month. They brought their plans and said, here's the plans. And maybe there's more to it than that, and that's why I raise it as a question. And then the last comment is whether or not it makes sense to have the phasing plans done as a public hearing as opposed to a non-public hearing as currently is proposed. Those are questions that I personally would like to hear addressed before I'm called upon to vote on the next time on this. I don't know whether other members feel that they're worth addressing the staff or not.
Ms. O'Brien?
Madam Chair, there's no way PM&E can answer why did the petitioner wait for a month before. We don't know that.
Them now, but I mean.
But we could not respond to that. That would have to be directed to the petitioner. That question.
Well, I don't know whether the staff has some insight as to why they didn't get it in front of them or not, but that was my point of my question.
Staff doesn't have any insight into that. So I can't foresee that PM&E or any staff could answer why did the petitioner wait to submit the plans for 1 month before.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Stolke?
I have a concern that I have expressed to you a couple of weeks ago. Those who were on the board when this came last year, I've been I have for a long time been concerned about the safety issues regarding that particular development. But my comment right now would revolve around the liability to the municipality because this has now been 10 years. And we have twice before, this Platting Board has twice before, and now being asked again to extend the deadline for the emergency the emergency access. And if, with that not done, over a period of time when this board continuously has in the past approved an extension of the deadline. And then there's also the issue of occupants of 800 homes having one road in and out. And if, God forbid, something should happen and they are blocked from exit and there's not even an emergency road, not to mention another road, and all of this, of course, is in violation of city code. What's the liability? I mean, beyond the human issues, which are paramount to me, there's also the issue of what position are we placing the municipality should there be, God forbid, something that occurs that would have been not a disaster if there had been another access or exit. So I called the city attorney and asked him that question, and I never got a response back. I did talk with him, and he never called me back because I am quite concerned about that. I think that's part of the responsibility that we bear as this board on just what position are we continuing to have in the past placed the municipality. I don't know the answer to that, and frankly, I don't know how to get it since the municipal attorney didn't return my call. Well, he said, by the way, he would return my call with information, and he never did.
The process, if the board is concerned about that, is for us to ask for an opinion, and we can't. That would have to be a motion made by you that we seek a legal opinion regarding this issue. And
is that appropriate
for me to do that now, I'd be more than happy to do that if it's an appropriate motion to be made in this, at this time.
Yes.
I move to direct, and help me with the wording so I get it correct, Madam Chair, but I move to direct that the board vote to seek an opinion from the city attorney regarding the liability, the potential regarding the liability to the city, to the municipality of Anchorage, I'm struggling with the wording because I hadn't expected to make the motion tonight. I was going to make it later. What I want to do is get an legal opinion regarding the liability if we should continue to allow an extension of time to not only to do the emergency access, but also a road, an actual road that the residents could use. I worded that poorly. I apologize.
Is there a second? Huh? Oh. Okay. And Mr. Krieger?
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Okay. Is there further discussion?
I think getting staff a legal opinion on, what it may be that the opinion is there's no liability in the municipality, or there may be additional liability, but it seems to be the part of the broader question is, if we vote no on this and the road doesn't get built, are we worse off liability-wise than we would be if we vote yes on it and kind of give an extension with the understanding that the road is going to go forward in this emergency road in October. So I don't mind any kind of legal advice and assistance on this, so I'm going to support the motion.
Is there any other discussion? Ms. Taylor.
I'm curious on this one procedurally. Because I've been directed not to participate, I intend to abstain on this particular motion, but I am curious about the general question. What liability do we incur with these decisions?
Anyone else? Is there any objection to the motion? So, seeing none, the motion is approved, and the staff is directed to ask the city attorney for an opinion regarding liability.
I just noted that the two folks that abstained showed up as voting.
Oh,
okay.
She'll fix the vote. Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
So moved. We're adjourned. You're going to have to take that up with Mr. Krieger.
What's that?
He'll be out of town.